The universe had long since categorized humanity as an anomaly but not a threat. A young species, technologically primitive compared to the galaxy's elder races, yet disturbingly ambitious. They lacked the biological enhancements of the Zalari, the psionic might of the Varrock, or the hive cohesion of the Zyn. Yet, they spread like wildfire, reckless and unpredictable. The Galactic Council observed them from a distance, occasionally interfering when they overreached. There was no need for war. Humanity would remain contained within their tiny sector, playing with their crude machines, oblivious to the true powers of the cosmos. Then, the humans did something that shattered all predictions. They surrendered. The transmission came without warning, broadcasted on all known frequencies, translated perfectly into every galactic tongue. It was simple and absolute. Humanity was declaring unconditional surrender to the Galactic Council. There had been no war, no skirmishes, not even a formal diplomatic incident. And yet, here they were, kneeling before the universe, admitting total defeat. The council chambers erupted into chaos. The Zalari diplomats were the first to express their suspicion. Surrender was a concept they understood, but it was always preceded by battle. The Zyn swarms found the act confusing. Why submit without resistance? The Varrock, a species of powerful telepaths, felt nothing but silence from the human envoys. No deception, no emotional distress, just an empty void where their thoughts should be. That terrified them most of all. Despite their unease, the Council accepted humanity's surrender. It was a formality. The humans had no real power to resist had they chosen to fight. A fleet was dispatched to Earth, not as conquerors, but as caretakers. They would integrate humanity into the galactic fold as a client species, stripping them of any dangerous technology, guiding their civilization toward a more controlled existence. It was for their own good. As the fleet entered the Sol system, they found no resistance. No hidden defenses, no last-ditch efforts to fight back. Humanity welcomed them with open arms. Earth's leaders stepped aside without argument, planetary defenses were powered down, and military installations were handed over without a single casualty. It was the most peaceful conquest in galactic history. Then things became strange. The first reports were dismissed as misunderstandings. Entire human cities functioned without centralized control. Industrial centers continued producing starship components long after the military had been disbanded. Power grids remained operational despite no visible infrastructure. The Zyn overseers assigned to Earth found themselves struggling to maintain order not due to human resistance but due to their overwhelming compliance. The humans obeyed every directive too well, anticipating orders before they were given, reorganizing planetary logistics without instruction. It was as if they had already planned for their own subjugation. The Varrock grew uneasy. Something was deeply wrong with humanity. Their thoughts were unreadable, their emotions void. When interrogated, human officials would provide detailed answers but never more than necessary. They never asked questions in return, never showed signs of despair or anger. Even when their rights were stripped away, they accepted it as if it were inevitable. Months passed. The occupation, if it could even be called that, had become the easiest in recorded history. Human worlds ran smoother than ever, productivity soared, and crime rates plummeted. Yet, the overseers felt no satisfaction, only growing unease. The feeling was indescribable, like a trap slowly closing without any visible mechanism. Then came the first disappearances. It began with low-ranking personnel. A Zyn enforcer missing from his assigned district, a Zalari diplomat never returning from a routine inspection. Isolated incidents at first, easily dismissed as accidents. But then entire battalions vanished. Surveillance footage showed nothing. No struggle, no resistance, just a moment of stillness and then emptiness where they once stood. Panic spread through the occupying forces. The council demanded answers, but none came. Communications were cut off from several human colonies simultaneously. Fleets were dispatched, but upon arrival, they found only abandoned cities running on autopilot, factories still producing unknown components without workers present. Then Earth itself went dark. The last transmission received was from the Varric commander overseeing the planet. His voice trembled with something his kind had never experienced before: fear. He spoke of shadows moving without light, of whispers from a species that should not have been able to hide from telepaths, of an unseen force closing in around them. His final words were barely audible. We were never the conquerors. The signal cut, and with it, all contact with Earth ceased. The Galactic Council scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Across the stars, humanity reappeared. Not as prisoners, not as slaves, but as something else. Something that had been waiting. Their ships were no longer crude imitations of galactic technology. Their weapons defied known physics. Their soldiers moved with precision beyond biological limits. They had never been conquered. They had never surrendered. They had only played their part, let the enemy inside, learned everything they needed. The greatest trick humanity ever played was convincing the universe they had lost. In the weeks following Earth's disappearance from galactic sight, the universe teetered on the edge of chaos. The Galactic Council, still reeling from the audacity of humanity's unexpected move, found itself scrambling for answers. Councils of war, committees of investigation, and expert sessions were called. But despite all the power of the galaxy's greatest minds, they were utterly perplexed. No one could explain what had happened. Earth had vanished, and with it, any trace of the humans who had once been the subject of ridicule and pity. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the signs began to emerge. Small ships, unmarked and oddly silent, began to appear at the edges of the galactic sectors. They were human ships, but their designs had evolved. Their engines defied conventional theories of propulsion, their hulls shimmered in ways that should have been impossible. These ships didn't follow the typical patterns of exploration. They didn't belong to any specific fleet or authority. They seemed to move in and out of sight, appearing only long enough to remind the galaxy that humanity was still out there, watching. The first real confrontation occurred at the edges of the Zalari Empire. A small fleet of Zalari ships, patrolling a neutral zone, came across an unfamiliar vessel. It was massive, far beyond anything the Zalari had seen before. As it approached, its weapons powered up, but it wasn't to destroy. The Zalari fleet, all advanced and powerful, could not prevent what happened next. The human ship sent a single beam of light, and in an instant, the entire Zalari fleet was disabled, their systems shut down as if a switch had been flipped. No explosions, no debris, no struggle, just a sudden and utter cessation of function. The human ship then turned and left, leaving behind nothing but the dead silence of defeat. The Zalari, despite their fear, sent a message. It was a diplomatic request, a plea for an explanation. The reply came quickly. A single transmission, once again in every language of the galaxy. The message was simple. We were never defeated. We simply bided our time. The Galactic Council immediately held an emergency session. The idea that humanity had somehow mastered a power so vast, so incomprehensible, was too dangerous to ignore. There were theories, of course. Some believed the humans had somehow discovered ancient technology, perhaps from the long-forgotten ruins of the old empire, a race that once ruled the galaxy before it fell into oblivion. Others thought it was something entirely different, that humanity had uncovered knowledge of the dark voids, the forbidden regions of space where reality itself bent and broke. But the most terrifying theory was the one most ignored, that humanity had never been as weak as they had appeared. They had always known something the rest of the galaxy did not. They had always been playing a long game. The Varric were the next to feel the sting of humanity's retribution. Their telepathic powers had once been unrivaled, and they were feared across the stars for their ability to invade minds and bend wills. They were used to controlling the thoughts of lesser beings, manipulating emotions, altering perceptions. Yet, when they sent their most skilled telepaths to probe the minds of human leaders, they encountered a wall. The Varric's mental probes failed utterly. No matter how hard they tried, they could not breach the minds of humanity. The humans' thoughts were sealed off, inaccessible, locked away behind an impenetrable barrier of mental silence. It was a defense the Varric had never encountered before. And in their fear, they made a grave mistake. The Varric sent an army to Earth. A fleet of their best soldiers, empowered with their psionic abilities, prepared for an invasion that would crush humanity once and for all. What they didn't expect was that Earth was no longer the primitive world they had once taken so easily. As soon as the Varric descended upon the planet, they were met with resistance unlike anything they had ever encountered. The human forces, now fully equipped with technology and weapons beyond comprehension, engaged with them swiftly and decisively. But it wasn't just the technology that frightened the Varric. It was the humans themselves. Their soldiers moved with terrifying precision, their tactics flawless, their strength and stamina enhanced beyond biological limits. The Varric found themselves not as conquerors but as prey, hunted by an enemy they could no longer understand. It was then that the true scale of humanity's power began to unfold. The invasion was repelled with such efficiency that it left the entire Galactic Council stunned. The Varric's strongest telepaths were captured, their minds dissected, their secrets revealed. The human forces didn't just fight, they understood. They understood the galactic powers, their technology, their weaknesses, their histories. The humans had been studying them all along, waiting for the moment when the galaxy would expose its own vulnerabilities. A broadcast was sent out across the stars. A chilling reminder to all who had underestimated humanity. We never played the game the way you thought we did. You were always our greatest tool. The galaxy trembled. What had once been a species destined for nothing but subjugation had now become the greatest power in the universe. Humanity had played the greatest trick ever conceived, not by deception but by patience, and now, the universe would know the consequences. The response from the Galactic Council was swift but fractured. Leaders from across the galaxy demanded an immediate counterattack, but the Council was no longer certain they could contain humanity. The ZYN were the first to respond, sending their most powerful fleets to the edge of human territory. The ZYN, with their vast numbers and hive mind intelligence, had long been one of the most feared forces in the galaxy. They believed their sheer unity and collective strength could crush anything in their path. However, when they arrived at the human borders, they found themselves confronted with something they could not anticipate. The humans had set up an intricate web of defenses, each more advanced than anything the ZYN had encountered. Massive energy barriers blocked their entry, while cloaked human ships with weapons that bypassed traditional defenses lay in ambush. For the first time in the galaxy's history, the ZYN fleets found themselves outmaneuvered, outgunned, and overwhelmed by a species they had once dismissed as a threat. The ZYN's collective intelligence was built on the idea of unity, of hive-driven action, but humanity's strategies were too unpredictable, too cunning. Each fleet they sent was systematically wiped out, with little more than scattered debris left in the wake of their defeat. The ZYN's queen, a figure of immense power and influence, broadcast a message to the human forces. The voice was one of desperation, of confusion. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "We never sought to destroy you. We only sought to control." The human response came almost immediately. It was a single transmission, encoded with such complexity that even the most advanced encryption expert struggled to decode it. When it was finally translated, the words were clear and simple. "We were never meant to be controlled." The ZYN queen, shaken to her core, realized the truth. The humans had never fought for survival, they had fought for freedom. A freedom they had already claimed for themselves, and now, they would not allow any force to take it from them. The defeat of the ZYN was but the beginning. As the news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy, other species began to take notice. The Varric, the Zalari, the Tkor, every empire that had once thought themselves invincible, every race that had looked down on humanity with disdain, now found themselves questioning their own superiority. What had they missed? How had they failed to see the true strength of a species they had considered weak? The answer, of course, was that humanity had never been weak. They had only allowed the universe to believe they were. It was a trick, a clever manipulation of perception, and humanity had played it perfectly. They had let the galaxy underestimate them, let it believe they were nothing more than a primitive race to be conquered. And all the while, humanity had been biding its time, learning, adapting, growing stronger. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. A series of encrypted transmissions were intercepted by the Galactic Council. They had been sent from an unknown source deep within human territory, far beyond any previously known borders. The transmissions contained detailed schematics for technology that was far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Weapons that could tear through entire fleets, devices capable of altering the fabric of space itself, and, most terrifying of all, plans for a new kind of ship, one that could travel through time itself. Humanity had not only surpassed the galactic powers in technology, but they had unlocked the ability to manipulate time. It was the ultimate weapon, the ultimate trump card, and humanity had kept it hidden for so long that the Council had no idea how close they were to total annihilation. It was then that the truth became clear to all: humanity had been playing a game of chess, while the rest of the galaxy had been playing checkers. And now, the game was about to reach its final move. The Council, now fully aware of the threat humanity posed, convened one last time. They debated their options, but it was clear they were divided. Some wanted to seek a diplomatic solution, to offer humanity a place at the table of galactic leaders. Others, fearing the complete collapse of their power, argued for total war, an all-out assault to destroy humanity before they could achieve their full potential. But humanity's actions spoke louder than words. Their fleets, vast and unyielding, moved across the galaxy with precision and purpose. They had not only conquered space, they had conquered time itself. And as they advanced, they left a message in their wake. Join us, or be left behind. It was a declaration of war, not just on the Galactic Council, but on the entire universe. Humanity was no longer content with being a part of the galaxy. They had transcended it. They were now the masters of their own fate, and the universe would either bow to them or be erased from existence. The greatest trick humanity had ever played was not simply convincing the universe they had lost. It was convincing the universe that it had won. The galactic powers trembled in the face of humanity's unimaginable potential. The Galactic Council, once united in their belief of their own superiority, was now fractured and confused. Diplomatic discussions had ceased, replaced by fear and growing resentment. As the human fleets expanded, so did their influence. Humanity was no longer the underdog, the prey to be hunted and controlled. They had evolved, transcended the very laws that had once kept them bound. Now, the rest of the galaxy had to face the terrifying truth that humanity had not only survived, they had thrived in the shadow of their conquerors. The first wave of humanity's expansion was a silent one. Entire star systems were taken over with little more than a flicker of resistance. The ships humanity had developed, now fully realized, were no longer bound by the physical constraints of the galaxy's current technology. They were faster, more efficient, and more destructive than anything the universe had ever seen. Fleets that once seemed invincible were swiftly dismantled, not through brute force but through precision, strategy, and an understanding of their enemies that no one had anticipated. In the wake of their victories, humanity didn't announce their domination in grandiose speeches or hollow declarations. Instead, they sent simple messages to the conquered, transmitted directly into the hearts of their leaders, embedded in the core systems of every fleet they destroyed. The message was always the same. We gave you a chance to join us. You refused. The rest of the galaxy had never experienced such directness. Their leaders, accustomed to years of political maneuvering and intricate games of diplomacy, were now faced with an enemy who spoke in the simplest of terms. Humanity had no interest in complex negotiations. There were no treaties to be signed, no council tables to sit at. They had already claimed what was theirs, and now, the universe was simply being given the opportunity to adapt or perish. The most shocking part of humanity's strategy was how they manipulated the very fabric of space itself. Their mastery of time, once thought to be a myth, was revealed to be a reality beyond even the most advanced understanding of quantum mechanics. Humanity's ships didn't just travel across space, they warped it. Entire fleets appeared at the most unlikely of locations, taking their enemies by surprise and striking at the most vulnerable moments. In this new phase of galactic warfare, time became a weapon, as humanity rewrote the rules of engagement. Battles were fought not only in the present but across multiple timelines, in multiple realities, creating a strategy that no one could predict or defend against. And then, humanity revealed their ultimate weapon, the Chrono-Core. The Chrono-Core was a ship unlike anything seen in the galaxy. It was capable of folding time within itself, creating pockets of altered reality where the passage of time was not linear. Entire civilizations could be erased in the blink of an eye, their existence removed from the very fabric of history. With the Chrono-Core, humanity could undo victories, erase defeats, and change the course of events before they even happened. It was the ultimate power, and the Galactic Council had no countermeasure. No species, no technology, could even fathom how to stand against it. The Council's desperation led them to take the only option left, a galactic-wide plea for peace. Representatives from every empire, from the Zyn to the Varrock, from the Tkor to the Zalari, sent envoys to humanity's capital, the once primitive world of Earth. The message was simple: humanity had won, but the universe didn't want to be destroyed. If humanity would offer peace, a chance to coexist, the galaxy would acknowledge their supremacy and offer them a seat at the highest councils. It was a last-ditch effort to avoid total annihilation. Humanity's response was delivered in a single broadcast. Every channel, every frequency, from every corner of the galaxy, heard the same voice. We did not come to rule. We came to show you that the only true power is the power of choice. You were all content to live under the illusion of control, but you have forgotten what freedom means. We took it from you not to conquer, but to remind you of its value. The voice paused for a moment, the silence a palpable weight in the air. The next word sent a chill through the hearts of all who listened. Now you will choose. Join us, and you will know freedom. Resist, and your existence will cease to matter. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, systems fell into silence. The leaders of the various species, who had once ruled with absolute authority, were now forced to confront the reality that their reigns were over. The power they had once wielded was nothing in the face of humanity's new reality. The galaxy was no longer the domain of the old empires. Humanity had not just won, they had fundamentally altered the very concept of power. One by one, the galaxy's major empires began to kneel. They offered their resources, their fleets, and their knowledge to humanity, hoping to be spared from their new ruler's wrath. And with each submission, humanity's power grew even stronger. They reshaped the galaxy in their own image, establishing new laws, new systems, and a new order. The old hierarchies that had once defined the universe crumbled beneath the weight of humanity's vision. The greatest trick humanity had played was now undeniable. The galaxy had believed they were weak, that they had been conquered. But the truth was far more profound. Humanity had never been defeated. They had only been waiting for the moment when they could reveal their true power, when the galaxy would finally understand what it meant to be free. And now, they were the ones who held the future in their hands. Humanity had not just tricked the galaxy into thinking they were weak. They had tricked it into believing they needed to be ruled. But now, there was no one left to rule but them. The galaxy, once a place of vibrant power struggles and complex alliances, now stood in awe of its new rulers. The empires that had once dominated the stars found themselves subjugated not through military might alone, but through the simple truth that humanity had revealed. Power was not just a matter of weapons and armies, it was about choice, vision, and the ability to transcend the constraints of what others believed was possible. Humanity had shattered the very notion of control and, in doing so, had redefined what it meant to rule. As the last remaining resistance factions disbanded, and the final fleet of the Varrock was forced to surrender, the galaxy began to change in ways no one had anticipated. Humanity's new era was one not of oppression, but of a transformation that made the universe itself bend to their will. The leaders of the once great galactic races sat in silence as humanity reformed the very foundation of governance. Empires were dissolved, borders erased, and new alliances were forged, not under duress, but under the banner of a new, radical freedom. Under humanity's guidance, the galaxy began to experience an unprecedented age of technological and cultural growth. The Chrono-Core, though feared, was no longer used for destruction. Instead, humanity used its power to reshape history for the better. Entire civilizations, once on the brink of extinction due to their own hubris, found new life under the protection of humanity's vision. Species that had been in perpetual conflict were brought together to build instead of destroy, to learn instead of conquer. But even with these sweeping changes, a nagging undercurrent of doubt persisted. Not all were content with humanity's new role as the supreme power in the galaxy. Some of the older species, those who had ruled the stars for millennia, began to question whether humanity's vision of freedom was truly what they had been promised, or if it was just another form of control. The Zalari, in particular, were suspicious of humanity's ability to control time itself, fearing that their advanced knowledge might eventually be used to manipulate the very essence of existence. A group of dissidents from various species, led by a charismatic and influential Zalari general named Thar, began to organize in secret. They knew the truth about humanity's hidden potential, they had seen the Chrono-Core in action, and the stories from those who had attempted to resist were chilling. These dissidents, though divided by species, shared one belief, that humanity, despite its claims of freedom, had woven a web of control around the galaxy that was impossible to escape. They began to plan, not for war, but for a way to expose humanity's greatest flaw, their reliance on time. The Chrono-Core, though powerful, was not infallible. If its technology could be turned against them, if it could be twisted to reverse humanity's rise, then the galaxy might stand a chance. But they needed the one thing humanity had never shared, the secrets of their manipulation of time itself. The Resistance's first strike came without warning. A fleet of ships, advanced beyond anything the galaxy had seen since humanity's initial rise, infiltrated human-controlled space, cutting through the fabric of reality like a knife through water. They struck not at humanity's ships, not at their cities, but at the very source of their power, the Chrono-Core itself. The fleet infiltrated Earth, breached the capital, and made their way to the heart of the most secure facility in the galaxy. Humanity's response was immediate, but not what the Resistance had expected. They thought the humans would panic, would rush to defend their technology at all costs. Instead, the humans watched quietly, observing from the shadows as the dissidents enacted their plan. The attack was swift, but there was no real resistance, no overwhelming force sent to protect the Chrono-Core. Instead, humanity simply waited. When the dissidents reached the Chrono-Core, expecting to destroy it or perhaps capture it for study, they were met with a revelation far more profound than they had ever anticipated. The Chrono-Core, as they had feared, was not just a machine, it was a conduit. A connection to something much larger, something beyond the galaxy itself. The Resistance realized, in that moment, that humanity had never truly been in control of time. They had merely discovered how to tap into an ancient force that had existed long before any species had evolved to understand it. The Chrono-Core was not a tool of domination, it was a key to the fundamental truths of the universe. Humanity's true power, it seemed, was not derived from control, but from understanding. They had unlocked the secrets of the cosmos itself, not by conquering it, but by accepting their place within it. The dissidents, in their attempts to stop humanity, had only exposed their ignorance. They had misunderstood the very nature of what humanity had accomplished. In a final broadcast to the galaxy, humanity spoke once more. We did not come to dominate. We came to unlock the door that others were too afraid to open. Time is not something to be controlled, but something to be understood. And now that we have seen the truth, we offer you the same gift. The choice is yours, evolve, or remain trapped in the limits you have placed on yourselves. And with that, humanity gave the galaxy a choice. It was not a command. It was an invitation. The Resistance, now disbanded and broken, realized their error too late. The galaxy would no longer fear humanity. Instead, it would learn from them, grow with them, and ultimately, transcend the boundaries that had once defined it. Humanity had not just played the greatest trick, it had rewritten the very rules of existence, and the universe was finally ready to play along. The galaxy's greatest journey had begun. As humanity, along with its allies, ventured deeper into the unknown, the search for the architects became a race against time itself. Entire fleets were mobilized, advanced technologies were shared, and ancient ruins scattered across the galaxy were uncovered. The galaxy, once divided by old grudges and alliances built on power, now operated as one unified force, driven not by conquest, but by an insatiable thirst for knowledge. They had learned to work together, to overcome their differences, and now, they faced a threat far more profound than any they had ever encountered. Yet, the deeper they delved into the void, the more they realized how small they truly were. The universe stretched out before them in all its terrifying vastness, and with every new discovery, the mystery of the architects only deepened. They found ancient relics, machines of incredible power, puzzles etched into the fabric of spacetime itself, and symbols that no civilization had ever dared to understand. These fragments pointed to something beyond even time, an intelligence so advanced, so unfathomable, that it made the very concept of human superiority seem insignificant. As the search for the architects continued, the dark force that had been watching them for eons finally revealed itself. It was not a single entity, but a collective intelligence, a shadowy network of beings that existed beyond the boundaries of time. These entities, known only as the Voidwalkers, had once been the architects' disciples, but something had gone wrong. They had become obsessed with power, seeking to control not just time, but the very fabric of reality itself. They had learned to manipulate the ancient forces the architects had left behind, twisting them to serve their own dark purpose. Their goal was not knowledge, but dominion over all that was, is, and will be. The Voidwalkers had watched as humanity and its allies uncovered the clues left behind by the architects. They had waited for this moment, when the galaxy's greatest minds would come together to unlock the ultimate truth. But the Voidwalkers were not interested in sharing that truth. They had their own agenda, one that involved rewriting the universe according to their twisted vision. Their goal was simple: to erase the architects' legacy and reshape reality in their image. Humanity's understanding of the architects had always been incomplete, but now they were faced with the terrifying realization that their search for knowledge had led them directly into the path of the Voidwalkers. The ancient warning left by the architects was clear: there were forces in the universe that were beyond even the architects' control, entities that existed to maintain balance and to ensure that no one, no matter how powerful, could ever truly dominate reality itself. The Voidwalkers were the custodians of that balance, and they would stop at nothing to prevent anyone from unlocking the full power of the architects. To the Voidwalkers, humanity was an insignificant blip in the vast timeline of the universe. But to humanity, this was a fight for survival, a fight not just for their future, but for the very freedom they had fought so hard to secure. The final confrontation took place in the heart of the universe, in a place where time and space folded into one another, where the laws of physics no longer held sway. The galaxy's greatest minds and their most powerful fleets gathered for what would be the ultimate battle, not against the Voidwalkers' armies, but against the very forces of reality itself. Humanity's greatest weapon, the Chrono-Core, was at the center of this struggle. But the Voidwalkers had anticipated this, and they had their own means of combating it. They were capable of manipulating time itself, altering the very timeline humanity had relied upon to outmaneuver their enemies. But what the Voidwalkers didn't realize was that humanity had learned from them. They had learned not just how to bend time, but how to break it. In the heart of the final battle, humanity's leaders, the Chronomancers, activated the Chrono-Core in ways never before seen. They didn't just manipulate time, they shattered it. The very fabric of the universe unraveled before the Voidwalkers' eyes, and for a brief moment, the galaxy seemed to exist in multiple timelines, all overlapping, all converging on the same moment. The Voidwalkers, with all their ancient power, found themselves helpless as the universe bent to humanity's will. In that moment of cosmic chaos, humanity's true victory was not in their ability to control time, but in their understanding of it. They had not simply defeated the Voidwalkers through brute force. They had outsmarted them, outthought them, and, most importantly, they had redefined the very meaning of power. Humanity had proven that the true power of the universe was not in domination or control, but in the freedom to choose, to adapt, and to evolve. As the dust of the final battle settled, the galaxy found itself on the precipice of a new era. The Voidwalkers, once thought to be the ultimate threat, had been defeated, not just through humanity's strength, but through their understanding of the deeper laws of existence. The architect's legacy had not been erased, it had been embraced, and with it, a new understanding of time, reality, and freedom. Humanity stood at the forefront of a new age, an age where the galaxy was no longer divided by old conflicts or the desire for power, but united in the pursuit of knowledge, growth, and understanding. The universe, once a chaotic and violent place, had become a canvas for all species to explore, to evolve, and to transcend the limitations of their own understanding. And so, the greatest trick humanity had played on the universe was not just in their rise to power, but in their revelation of the truth, that the greatest power was not in what one could control, but in what one could learn to understand. The galaxy, united under this new vision, now stood together, ready to explore the vast unknown, knowing that the true journey had only just begun.